Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Card is Going to Change. That's right, AIW's very own podcast. And my name is Alex Worldwide Keller, and I just want to tell you all about one of our great sponsors. That's right, Pollyanna DIY, PollyannaDIY.com, at Pollyanna DIY on Twitter, Instagram, and etc. And what Pollyanna DIY has to offer you, they have excellent original wrestling enamel pins, shirts, including the Extreme Roots 91 t-shirt. Checking my hair right now. I have some medium roots. Take care of that in a bit. That's right. They have it all. And wrestling promoters and wrestlers, if you're looking to get into the enamel pin game or t-shirts, Pollyanna DIY wants to hook it up. Now let's take it to the show. The reason you hit download, the card is going to change.
Hello once again, everybody. Thanks for listening to AIW's The Card is Going to Change. Before we get into this week's episode, as always, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors that help us bring the show to you for free each and every week. Firstly, thanks to Angelo's Pizza. They're feeding us here as they always do while we record, and they, of course, bring pizza to you at our live events at Mount Carmel. If you want to try more of their pizza or anything else on their menu, it's all delicious. Head to Angelo's on Madison Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio. And thanks to Smart Mark Video, they record all of our live events. And if you want to relive any of those or watch them for the first time, you can purchase that on DVD or digital download from smartmarkvideo.com. And additionally, head to powerbomb.tv, sign up using the code ABSOLUTE, and you will get a 20-day trial for free. And then stick around and just keep watching the shows that we put out there from the AIW archives. And as always, thanks to Jack Prince, who helps take care of all of our printing and graphic design needs. They can do all of that and more for you, whether it be banners, t-shirts, business cards, flyers, everything and anything. For all that they have to offer, head to jackprince.com.
JAKPrince.com.
That's right, and that voice right there, none other than AIW President Matt Wadsworth, joining us here on this episode of the podcast, along with AIW owner John Thorne. And my name is Steve Guy, your moderator of sorts. On this episode, we're gonna throw it back. I guess it's not a Thursday, maybe for some of you if you're listening to it, but that's okay.
The Wayback Machine, you remember that website?
The Wayback, oh yeah,
Let's do that.
the Wayback Machine. We're gonna cover some alumni, some people who were part of AIW, and
Been a while since we did this.
it has been, yeah, probably like almost 2 years.
We probably should have researched who we did before, but
We might repeat some of this. That's all right.
that's all right.
That's right. I don't think I was on any of those other ones.
No,
I wasn't on them.
We got some new listeners.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is before you became the moderator.
This is before I was a moderator. There was no moderator at that time.
I don't think those episodes count.
You had a host.
Those aren't canon, are they?
Yeah, we had a host before we went out to dinner.
And a studio before you got locked out of it.
Hey. Allegedly. So, let's start here.
I like Glenn.
We'll start with Drake Younger.
This is the number one you're
This
going
is
on?
number one. I'm gonna go with because I'm looking at the.
I'll let Wadsworth
the
take
list.
this one. I'll let this one. This one gives me a little PTSD sometimes.
Well, yeah, for you. Drake was one of the best dudes ever. Flat out. He was even pre-PMA Drake. He was always there. He was always excited to be there. We had him, I think when we first brought him in, he was actually the CZW champ.
Not yet. No.
Or was it just before?
Hell on Earth 3, I think, was his first show. That was his first show. Hell on Earth 3.
Because we did him and Vince, which
Yeah,
actually was a highlight in a dark era for AIW.
Yeah, that was a couple months later, I believe.
But no, Drake. One of my favorite memories about him, we did when we had to do AR Fox and ACH, the 30-minute Iron Man.
Yeah.
We did that And because Apollo Crews was supposed to be in it, he got hurt. So AR Fox replaced him, and it ended up being just this blow-away match, probably the best one we had seen at that
ACH
point.
replaced them.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, that's right. ACH replaced Cruz.
Ooh-ha.
Ooh-ha, Nation. And Drake was in on that show. That was shortly before I think he got signed.
Yeah, that had to be one of his last.
It was one of the last runs. I think the following Absolution was his last show.
Yeah.
But he had come back. He had been gone for a while because he had been out in California. He had come back. And they sent me, Biggins flagged me down and sent me in to do this big promo, kind of spur the moment to put over the match and put over. And I went in there and I just talked about it and talked about, this is why we enjoy wrestling. And when you have people ask you how you still watch it. And
Biggins used to call it the Ian speech.
Speech.
He loved those Ian Rotten IWA Mid-South impromptu speeches after a good match.
You're going to be a star. Ian. Yeah, those were his exact words. He flagged me down from the door. I was sitting back. He'd go give an Ian speech. Go give an Ian. So I went out there and I talked about it and put them both over. And the funny thing is, at the time, I think AR Fox was the bigger name. So
Yeah.
I didn't even talk about him too much. I talked more about ACH because he was up and coming at the time. And I went backstage, and I just all of a sudden, I feel this grip on my shoulders and that distinct Drake voice. Oh, man, that promo was great. That thing gave me goosebumps. I love it. It makes me want to just go out there and do it all over again, man. Good job. And it was, I'm just some commentator, and this is a guy who's been all over the world. So it meant a lot that he took the time to put that over and to tell me how great it was.
It's kind of crazy because we saw different, I guess, incarnations of Drake Younger over the years that we used him, because we used him for several years sporadically.
Mm-hmm.
And, when he first came in, he was just kind of like this young up and coming guy who was, he was doing CZW and he's doing IWA Mid-South and he's doing some other stuff and he's building a name for himself. And he was just this, the most positive, coolest dude ever. His first night in, he actually wrestled me in the Necro Butcher, which that was a fucking terrifying experience for me. But I'm sure I've talked about it before, but he was like, yeah, I'm going to give you a Drake's Landing onto a shopping cart. And I'm like...
Which, for those unfamiliar, most of you probably know it as a vertebraker.
Yeah.
Which, in and of itself, is one of the scariest moves, I think, in professional wrestling.
And I was kind of like, what should I say here? And I was just like, sure, cool, let's do it. And, that was brutal. That was probably a dumb decision for me. But Drake used to come in. He would come in, days early and just, hang out. And, he would... drink with us, and we would have he would come to house parties around that era, and he was around a lot, and it's kind of crazy because then we saw Drake, which is kind of well documented. Drake got really bad into drugs and addiction and stuff like that, and we saw that Drake,
the dark days.
Yeah, very, and for those people that weren't around him then, they were, it was scary. It's like what you see on a documentary or something, of someone right before they die. That's where Drake Younger was kind of at. And I'll never forget, we were at a bar somewhere. It was my birthday party, actually. He had stayed over for my birthday party or something. We were at a bar, and nobody could find him. And we were like, oh, maybe he went back to my house and went to sleep or what. And Biggins found him passed out, face down in a pile of snow in the middle of December, totally unconscious. And Biggins was trying to wake him up, and he woke up and he thought it was time for him to go do a run-in, and he thought he was at a wrestling show. That's he was totally out of his mind.
It's funny, but not funny.
It was, I
think it's funny in retro. It's one of those things that's funny in retrospect because where he's at now.
Right.
What a good place he's at now. But it could have easily, like John was saying, it could have easily gone the other way.
Right. And, a lot of, he's from that era where it did go the wrong way for a lot of those guys that were doing death matches and stuff like that. And then, it got to the point to where we didn't even want to book him anymore because it was just, it was just a different guy altogether.
Right.
not the guy that we became friends with and the guy we enjoyed being around. Like there was a long stretch between Drake Younger bookings, and I credit to like him. He just picked up his life and he went to California to probably get away from whatever wasn't going on in his life, and he cleaned himself up and started I think he just took all that energy and started working out and keeping himself busy so he didn't have idle hands, and totally just like did a 180 and not only reinvented his wrestling career but just like reinvented his life altogether.
His personal life as well. As I was going to say, it really was a case where I think both from a wrestling standpoint, because he stopped. He never swore off death matches. He was always very vocal about the fact that he wouldn't bury deathmatch wrestling or deathmatch wrestlers.
Right.
But he wasn't doing it anymore. And he moved up there, and it really was, when he moved out to California, a personal reinvention to go along with the wrestling style. Because at this point, he had gained a reputation. He was just another deathmatch guy. He was a Pondo. He was a necro butcher. He was one of these guys that just did violent style. And he went out to California and said, "No, I can wrestle." And he worked with some really, really impressive names out there and hung with them and showed that he was capable of it.
Yeah, and totally just reinvented himself. And that's when he wasn't like full time like he was, but we brought him back a few times during that era, and it went back to be the guy who we remembered that was a pleasure to be around.
Yeah,
and he had stopped drink. He didn't even drink anymore. He 100% stopped any sort of altering substance whatsoever, and just totally like cleaned his life up, which some people need to do that, and it's obviously worked out great for him, and now here he is in the WWE.
Yeah, I was gonna say we still get to see him every once in a while.
Yeah. We've seen him when NXT rolls through town, and it's awesome. He actually got to appear on WrestleMania this year, something I'm sure he never in a million years thought would probably happen to him.
I think he was when the last time we were at NXT. Wasn't he getting yelled at, or we were getting yelled at because we were talking to him?
Yeah.
We were trying to break it down. He's like not doing it.
He was getting yelled.
He was so excited.
Yeah, he was getting yelled at because the refs got to do all the ring breakdown and stuff like that in WWE. And
we got him in a little bit of trouble.
It's funny, like every NXT show, Biggins and I would go to him all before, and he would always like talk to us from the ring and stuff like that, and like crack these inside jokes. His favorite thing was not even at an AIW show, at a Mega Championship Wrestling show, him and Josh Prohibition and Biggins just went out as fans because he was in town for AIW and there was nothing to do that night. And they went out to the show, and who everyone, AIW fans would know as Jerry at this point. Yeah. He did some angle out there. And at that time, he was wrestling by the name of Soda Pop Johnson.
Yeah.
And he like flipped a table and like made this huge mess. And every time I see Drake, even though I wasn't there, but I would always be with Biggins, he'd be like, "Biggins, remember when Soda Pop flipped that table, man?" And he would just start laughing hysterically. I don't know. Drake's a really good dude, and I'm glad that things have worked out in his favor, because he was definitely on the path to some very unfortunate news, I think.
Well, if nothing else, we've got the lasting legacy of it's Absolution, baby.
Yeah, he loves saying it's Absolution, baby.
He walked in. That was his last show, Absolution. He walked in, and all day he just kept yelling it. You'd hear it throughout Turner's Hall periodically.
Well, I've got the card is going to change research department feeding me names of people to ask about here.
Oh, great.
Our next one, in case you guys want to see a photo, Archibald Peck.
This
Marchie Archie?
Yeah, Marchie Archie. This is 100% a Biggins guy right here. This was there was a time where Archibald Peck was probably like one of the most talked about indie guys going. No doubt about it. And he was super over, and that was at a time where there was all these different companies like creating these stars, and we were trying to grab as many of them and bring them to Cleveland as possible, and he was definitely one of them. I don't know how many times he was in. He was in a few times.
It was a few times. The one that stands out to me is I think he was he in the first J-Lit?
I think so.
I know he was in J-Lit. I believe it was the first year of J-Lit.
Yeah, he was in a J-Lit. He was in...
I know he did some scrambles, I think.
Yeah, he did like this weird absolution angle where he did he was like a special guest referee for Marion Fontaine and Colin Delaney.
Fun. That's why I was like, I associate him with Colin for some reason.
Because he was doing like an MMA gimmick and we wanted that to be a surprise, but he wouldn't do the MMA gimmick for whatever reason. So it was like, it was like a weird thing. He was I don't know. I wouldn't say that me and Archie were buddies at all. He was a weirdo. I don't even remember why, but for some reason, like he didn't shake Biggins' hand somewhere, and like Colt Cabana laid into him so bad. And I don't know why. I think maybe he just didn't see Biggins' hand. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I remember Colt Cabana just like laying into him like for not shaking his hand, and. Now, I think it's common knowledge he's a WWE writer now.
Yeah, every now and then I'll see people who legitimately don't know that. I'll see somebody ask on Twitter, and I'm like, he's writing for WWE, and they're like, wait, really?
And I can confirm that I've been informed by the powers that be at Smart Mark Video that he has purchased recent AIW events.
Really?
Yes. So I don't know if that's supposed to be out there, but whatever. He said, "Hey, why is Marchie Archie buying your shows? What happened to that guy?" I said, "Oh, he works with WWE."
Yeah, there don't seem to be any similarities in any sort of storylines whatsoever in the last couple years. Yeah,
I would have had Becky Lynch be a heel too. No, I'm just kidding.
It's working out well.
So our next person.
Yeah, I really have nothing to fucking say about Marchie Archie, man.
He's a guy that I remember being there. Like I said, I associate him with J-Lit.
Yeah.
I associate him with Colin. Nothing overly, not even as a knock against him. He was only in a handful of times, and it wasn't anything super memorable for me.
I remember something that happened when Chikara did a doubleheader with us at Turner's Hall. This is like right when we first started coming to Turner's Hall. I'm almost positive this is him. This is when they were like, we were really kind of like on like trial basis with Turner's Hall, and you couldn't break any chairs, couldn't touch any tables, and I'm pretty sure Marchie Archie just like fucking destroyed a bunch of chairs during a Chikara match at Turner's Hall.
I remember I was at the show, but I don't.
Someone's going to have to do some research on that and find the Chikara show from Turner's Hall and see if Marchie Archie just fucks some shit up. Because I'm almost positive. And maybe that's why he didn't shake Biggins' hand, because I think Biggins fucking screamed at him for breaking a bunch of chairs and almost costing us a venue. See, this is why Biggins needs to be around, because he has impeccable memories on anything.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone that ever pissed him off, or in specific detail,
the grudge
For him
aspect
to
of
ever
it.
be slighted, yes, he would know exactly.
But I'm almost positive if anyone could figure out those. I think it was only one Chikara show that happened at Turner's Hall.
Yeah, I only remember the one.
It was either a Chikara show or a Beyond show. One of the two. It wasn't an AIW show, but he destroyed some shit. And man, Biggins was fucking pissed. I'm almost positive it was a Chikara show.
And in case anybody couldn't figure it out, he's being called Marchie Archie because
they know, Steve. They know.
his character was a marching band guy. Well, we got some newer listeners, newer AIW fans.
Marchie Archie, man. That shit was over.
Our next alumni being shown to me right now, I don't think you need a photo. His name is Paul London.
See, I can't. There was about a 10-month window when I wasn't around, and that was the Paul London.
Oh, look at you guys. Fucking Paul London. There's not a lot to say about Paul London, honestly. He was when we were. This is like he was on the J-Lit before the J-Lit when we did our own TPI, but we called it something else that
we're not allowed to discuss.
We're not allowed to discuss because we received a lawsuit over it.
Oh.
But Paul London was like the big name, like there was. a period of time where like, you know, there'd be a name, and Paul London was it. And like it was a split with somebody in the Virginia area, and he drove in, I believe he drove in with John Kerman and Sonjay Dutt or something along those lines. But I mean, Paul London was a cool dude. You know, he wasn't, he like, I don't have any weird Paul London sort of stories or anything like that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I have nothing to say about Paul London.
Well, all right then.
I think, you know, I'm sure he talked about drugs and
Probably did some, allegedly.
How this next one being shown to me, I think maybe we covered it. Well, you covered it on a previous episode.
I would imagine at some point it was.
Let's throw it out there anyway. Claudio Castagnoli.
I'll let Wadsworth go with this one.
He was. You want to talk about names in the early days? He was, because he was a huge indie name when there weren't a ton of them out there.
Yeah.
And in the dark days again of AIW, he was definitely a highlight. He was always came in, always did whatever we asked.
I mean, I attribute him to like, you know, I know Biggins said this on early episodes of the podcast, but it's 100% like he was a Biggins guy.
Yeah, absolutely. They were. He and Biggins always got along really well.
I was going to say
they were really close.
When Biggins passed away, he was one of the first people tweeting, if I remember that.
Well, yeah, because there was, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, right when Biggins first got involved with AIW, like on an official kind of, hey, or not even official, but like, hey, like I want to be officially involved with this.
Right.
It was right around the time Ring of Honor came to Cleveland for the first time, and Claudio Castagnoli was on that show, and Biggins was like, I want to book Claudio Castagnoli for AIW. And he did. Like, he paid for him out of his own pocket, booked him, got a hold of him on MySpace, I'm sure. Because that used to be how you got a hold of all these guys, was on MySpace.
Yeah, of course.
And then from there, we booked him a handful of times through Bryce Remsburg, because, you know, this is, even though, like, we had all been involved in wrestling, different people for long periods of time, like, the outside of the localized version of indie pro wrestling was still, like, a foreign thing. And Bryce Remsburg started coming to us with, like, carloads of guys and stuff like that.
Yeah, he'd
like,
bring us he'd say, hey, I'll come in with
like
Claudio and
Hero and Hollow Wicked and Kingston.
Three other Chikara guys.
Because they're traveling home from IWA Mid-South. They're going to Fight Sports Midwest or something, you know, something weird like that. Like,
this is the early Joe Sposto card.
Before Joe Sposto.
Yeah, I mean,
like the original Joe Sposto car.
Yeah. Before, like,
in the idea of Joe essentially loading up like a bunch of guys from the East Coast, not quite East Coast, but
and then
PA, New York here.
JT Lightning started booking Claudio all the time.
JT loved Claudio,
and he was even Cleveland All Pro champion for a while, and that's when there was like a little dissension between AIW and Cleveland All Pro, because Cleveland All Pro got a TV deal at the time, so JT was saying no crossover. And he made Claudio the champion, but then Claudio would still like text Biggins, and then we would always end up like Biggins would get a hold of me and be like, "Hey, do you want to go to meet Claudio at a bar?" I remember one time, like, this is way long before Claudio was involved in any sort of high-profile relationships. He'd be like, do you want to hook Claudio up on a blind date? And I tried to hook Claudio up with my friend Macy, but like she wasn't into it. I remember I watched December to Dismember with Claudio and maybe Loki at a BW3 somewhere.
It's possible, because I think they were both around that same time.
Yeah.
I can't remember if they were on the same card, but it was likely. That's the same era.
But the thing is like a guy like Claudio would know me by name, but not by sight, because I was always with Biggins and everyone remembered Biggins.
Right.
So like when I was at the WrestleMania party this year, he was in the elevator. I was like, "Oh, hey, what's up, man? How are you?" And he's like, "Oh, Claudio, nice to meet you." And I was like, "I'm not even gonna correct him, man.
I've known you for 12 years now.
I'm not even gonna correct him." He wanted nothing to do with it.
You know, he's a guy that I think in the current format, in the current era, we do a ton with. Back then, he was a name that we brought in to kind of get a good match out of and supplement our guys.
Well, and I don't even know if it was to get a good match out of it. It was more of like that was from a time period to where like we couldn't afford anything, but we were chasing after the like independent wrestling like elite hype or whatever you want to call it, like because it would be like if you saw some of these guys on a company, that would automatically like put you in a different category. And this is at an era where like this is before like I said, there's MySpace, but this is before the social media that we have today. And it was all by like
sponsored ads or anything on MySpace.
Yeah, and it was all by like, I'm gonna look at this lineup on a DVD and I'm gonna buy it because Claudio Castagnoli is wrestling on it or something like that. So that was kind of the whole process then. But like, we're talking like we could afford a guy like that, maybe, you know, because AIW tickets were like $7 then. Like $7.
Realistically, that might have been overcharging for some of the shows we put on.
Yeah. So it was like everything was taking a loss, and it was like, you know, there's some shining moments in that era, like, you know, Claudio and using a lot of these guys that, you know, went on to be amazing, but like a lot of it is just it's not good. It's, you know, but I'm glad it's out there because people can go and see the growth and the trial and error. And Claudio, unfortunately, was part of that trial and era, but I think it worked out pretty good for him. And continuing with this theme, he is also now a full-time employee of the WWE.
Yeah, I was going to say, so are you
familiar.
saying that you used to hang out with Claudio at the bar?
Who did?
You.
I'm not acknowledging that shitty joke.
Terrible pun. All right, research has handed me the next name. What do you want to do? 1, 2 more, you think?
Whatever, we'll see. We got to check with the producer for time.
Masada.
Oh God, I love Masada, but it is definitely, it is definitely a. I don't even know what the proper word is. It is a thing when you have to deal with Masada. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Wadsworth, you got a Masada because I got to gather my thoughts.
You know, he was. I think most of his run was in that same 10-month window that.
He didn't have like a huge run. He only did a couple.
He did a couple shows, and I think my first show back might have been one of his last ones. Shortly after I returned,
I think he returned. I think he returned on the show that you might have returned at.
I know he was at one of my first shows back.
I think that was
that was kind of my first show, and I don't have any memories of personally interacting with him.
So okay, here's a pretty good Masada story. I don't know how I met Masada at the Gathering of the Juggalos when I went there with Colt Cabana. That's how I met him, and we ended up drinking all night and just hanging out and talking, and you know we were like on the same wavelength.
It's the way a lot of guys got booked in those days.
Yeah, it's like
that sounds right.
We would run into them somewhere and just hang out and be like, all right, well, I want to hang out with those guys again, so come on in.
And the first time we booked him, we produced his shoot interview like for him, which Biggins did all the research on, and you know, I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I don't know where it's at, but it's out there. And he says like a lot of crazy shit in it. But that was, you know, that I want to say we only booked him maybe three or four times. I can't remember who he wrestled there. I know he did the skewers to fucking Hobo Joe.
Man.
But the one memory that sticks out to me when we booked Masada is we go out drinking after the show, and it's like a bunch of guys. I know Colin Delaney's there and some other people, and it's last call, you know, and we're at a bar where they have like, you know, off-duty police officers like doing security.
Sure.
And they're like, all right, last call. And, you know, we're talking or whatever. We're like, all right, we're getting ready to go. And like the off-duty police car, our police officer comes around. He's like, "All right, I got to take him, guys. You know, like they do in every bar in the fucking world. All right, it's time to go. I got to take him." And you know, he says, "You got to drink it, or we got to go." And Masada's like, "Fuck you, you fucking pig!" And we're like, "Whoa!" And he's like, "You ain't taking my fucking beer!" And he starts trying to fight the cop. And Colin Delaney is, you know, trying to de-escalate the situation as much as possible, and it's not working. And you know, Masada keeps voicing his hatred for police, and we finally, I don't know, I can't remember who else is there, but we finally get him out of the bar, and then he proceeds to start, as hard as he can, start kicking the fucking giant window in front of the bar, trying to cave it in for last call, and finally get him out of that situation before the real police come.
on duty police show up.
And I take him to the airport right from there, and we just end up having like heart-to-heart conversation about relationships and girls.
There was a lot of that in that era for you, I think, too.
It's just, you know, Masada he's a deep soul. I'll say that. And then I saw Masada when we were in New Orleans at WrestleCon. He was fucking hammered out of his mind. And Grado was with me. This is when Grado was like, "Hey, you want to see how many people love Grado? Follow me." And like he said something like that, and like, you know, everyone's like putting him over or whatever. And then I see Masada, and we're talking. Masada's like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And he's and like he starts like getting in Grado's face, kinda. And then like I somehow get out of that, and Grado's like, "That guy's real fucking scary, man. Why does Masada want to beat me up?" Yeah, he's an intense dude, very intense guy. If you're on his good side, I would imagine that's pretty good. And if you're not on that, I don't fucking know, because he is an intense guy. Unfortunately, breaking the theme, Masada not having a full-time career in the WWE currently.
Nothing at all?
No, but you can't find some Sunday Night Heat matches
There you go.
from back in the day. I think Masada wrestling Maven. There was a time where, you know, Masada is a good wrestler, but I think he is just a fucking insane person. I love him, but you know, I just don't know. I just don't know, man. You know, like it's hard to bring the dude around that wants to fight the police officers all the time.
That's fair. All right, so we'll end with this, and I'm pretty sure this is an easy one for you both. Gentleman by the name of Briley Pierce.
Hot young Briley?
Hot young Briley.
Oh, man.
Research has handed me hot young.
That's your pick? That's your pick?
That's the big finish, huh?
That was the big finish.
Briley?
I don't even know how we got a hold of hot young Briley, honestly.
It's through his brother. He used to come to the shows with his brother, with Dolph.
But like, I don't know how we started booking him. I think when he got fired,
When he got released, yeah.
maybe EC3 was like, "Hey, book this dude."
I think there was a slight relationship because he used to come around with. Because I remember one of my memories was before he got fired.
Yeah, when they were all signed in the crowd at that one show.
Yeah, they used to always. Hell on Earth was always good for. Dolph would be there. EC3 would be there because they were home. They were on break, basically. They had Thanksgiving off. They had the day after, so they would come to Hell on Earth. And he came with Dolph. He was under developmental at the time, and obviously Ziggler walks in. He went to stop and pay at the door and was blown away that you guys said, no, go ahead and hold your money. You're good. You got a contract. That's as good as admission tickets around here.
Yeah, contracts get you in free.
Do they?
WWE contracts only. None of these other fucking bullshit contracts.
Oh, okay.
Well, fucking WWN contracts getting you in for free.
No great hot young Briley stories though.
No, not really. I mean, he's like he is. You know, he's kind of strange. I don't know.
He is. He
has like a weird sense of humor to where like
guy, yeah.
sometimes like I feel like I'm not smart enough to like understand where he's going. But
He's out there in the acting and the improv world though, doing his thing.
You know, interesting. I guess little fact is Dolph Ziggler's Art of Wrestling podcast was recorded at AIW backstage, whenever that was, like so many years ago. That is even before the Turner's Hall era. That was when we were at this like little church in West Park or whatever, the Puritist Church, which was a fucking. That place was something. That's all I gotta say.
That's where I made my return, man.
But the big Hot Young Briley thing was, I know we covered when it happened, was when I ran into them on Thanksgiving Eve, and that's how Mike Tolar made his comeback. And Hot Young Briley hadn't even really been wrestling and had no gear, so the only gear at their parents' house was Dolph Ziggler's Lana airbrushed like pleather gear. But I don't really know anything to say about Hot Young Briley. He's I think he works for Dick House, the guys that produced the Jackass movies. Right. And I know after he got fired, he was like on the staff for, what was that fucking prank show, Swerved, on the network?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he was on the production staff for that. I don't know. He's just a dude, Hot Young Briley.
He was. I mean,
I don't know if this is like the one to end on, because there's nothing.
Well, there was nothing negative. I do remember actually one memory that came to me of Turner's Hall, and he's a guy that he's one of those guys that I wouldn't necessarily hang out with. I wouldn't. Just.
Oh, I've hung out with him. He's fun to hang out with.
Well, no, not anything negative. We're just not on that level. But at the same time,
you can catch him at the backstage bar around the holidays.
Always got along real well. Always was willing to chat me up. And I remember walking into the locker room at Turner's on one of the shows. I think it's when he had his run with the Submission Squad.
Oh yeah, we made him a member of the Submission Squad, and him and Gary J were really fucking about to be a hot tag team.
It's a feud with Jock. Oh yeah, Jock and somebody. I don't remember who Jock was running with at the time, but that was the big...
Hot Young Briley had a big absolution moment.
Yeah, he was with the Submission Squad, but one of those shows at Turner's, I remember walking in the locker room, he was standing there, and randomly, to this day, he's the only person who's ever asked me to oil him up. Like, he asked me, he had to, or it wasn't even oil, it was the bronzer. He wanted me, he asked me to get his back. And I was like, years I've been involved with wrestling, and I've managed to avoid this moment. And it's Dolph Ziggler's brother, of all people, that...
Wasn't even the oil master, huh?
No. Well, you think he's pretty good at it himself.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, Hot Young Briley's a good dude. I don't know.
No, he was always a good dude. And it was, I think wrestling wasn't really his thing.
He's wrestling.
He gave it a run because
he's still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, he does some out west.
He's very outspoken, like anti-Triple H guy, I think. I think he just, like, when he got fired, he was just like...
Well, yeah, he was one of the guys when all the controversy happened with developmental. He was one of the most vocal ones.
Yeah.
While the Build 'em Out controversy went on, he was one of the key ones in that.
Yeah, and he gave me some of those stories in private, which is kind of crazy, but... like I said, he's kind of also like, you don't know if he's going for a joke or if he's going for like, just telling you a straight story.
He's very deadpan at times.
He's a deadpan
very
guy.
much.
But like, now he's doing a lot with like improv and auditioning, and sometimes he'll like just randomly text me and be like, "Hey, check out this short movie I made." And I'm like, "Okay, dude."
I did watch the one they just put up where they were robots.
He sent me that like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I watched that one not long ago on Facebook. There were some pretty good bits in it.
Yeah, so he's doing all kinds of stuff, like trying to be a comedy writer, doing, just trying to be fucking way more successful than an independent wrestling promoter.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, you know what? I'll give you a really good one to end on then, since that wasn't good enough for you.
I don't got any good dirt on Hot Young Briley.
That's okay.
Not a big name that people are like, oh man.
This will bring it to.
Want to hear about Hot Young Briley?
This will bring
His
us
brother's
to
Dolph
a definitive close here.
I love Hot Young Briley though.
Hot Young Briley's last match that we saw him in AIW was the return of Mike Tolar. What's Mike Tolar up to?
I don't know, dude.
It's a great mystery, man.
He's been liking a lot of my Facebook statuses. He's been liking those Wrestle Rager pics on my feed.
A lot of pictures with him and the kids.
The kids, yeah. He's being a dad. That's what he's up to these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he got hurt at that J-Lit, and that was. That was it.
It wasn't his run anymore.
Yeah, I think he got a little too scared.
Well, all right. Maybe
I did actually during that J-Lit, I did feed Tom Lawler info for commentary because I pointed out that he was on the same wrestling team as Dolph Ziggler and Gray Maynard from UFC.
Oh, okay.
They were all part of the St. Ed's wrestling team together. And Tom Lawler was all proud of himself that he knew it was St. Ed's without me telling him that part.
Well, how about that? Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
You don't got another one? You don't got another one? You're gonna go Hot Young Bradley, then Tolar, two Ziggler
Like those
fucking
are-
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that would be fun.
two Ziggler guys.
All right, let me get research on
Who's
this real
next?
quick.
Dana Brooke.
Re- Hangs out at the backstage bar sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, the research department's fed up. They got something else.
research department really excited. I think we've done this one though, but we've definitely talked about him on the podcast. Hey, you guys, tell me about the Brian Kendrick.
The Brian Kendrick, very good friends with Dave the Potato Dawson. They've been friends since the J-Lit weekend that we booked Brian Kendrick. He's a good dude. He's another kind of a weirdo dude, like
London.
thinks 9/11 was holograms and shit like that.
Oh.
But he's I like him. He's been known to like hang out whenever WWE's in town still, even though we only booked him twice or actually once the one
It
weekend
was
or whatever.
J-Lit. Yeah, he was the big name on one of the early J-Lits, and it was our big card that we were pulling was that it wasn't Brian Kendrick, but we were bringing back Spanky.
Yeah, and what she said, I think WWE owns that, but like whatever, fuck it. Because
We were low profile enough at the time to get away with it. I think.
now we would have got a cease and desist. But he. I don't know if we ever specifically said he was the WWE employee in question that was not a fan of Alex Worldwide Keller.
I was gonna say I heard a rumor that there was somebody he didn't like.
Weren't
on
you
the
there?
AIW
Weren't you
roster.
there?
No, I was not there.
Oh man, that was a day.
I was not.
Yeah.
I went to that show, but not with you guys, and then you guys were out afterwards.
Worldwide was on one that day, and Brian Kendrick was not having it.
I believe that led to a Sauce sabbatical.
That was
That was the direct cause of the suspect.
because Brian Kendrick looked at Worldwide and said, "I think you should leave." But I like Brian Kendrick. He's like, he's one of those guys like that's, they're really rare to find these days. These like old school independent guys that were like a part of the initial independent wrestling boom, in late, 90s, early 2000s. I think he started in 99. And, he's one of those weird guys that was a part of that growth of it and also, saw success from it and went back and forth. Like, I would love to know statistics on how many times he's been hired and fired. It has to be the most ever.
It's up there.
It has to be the most ever because, like, he was, he even had, like, a run in the Memphis developmental in, like, 2000 or something.
Yeah, early on, and then he after that didn't work out.
Then he was back on the Indies. Then he was in Ring of Honor. Then he was like the naked Spanky, the streaker guy or whatever. So he has had a wild career actually. But he's a good dude that like to talk to. He's like knows everything like about wrestling. Like he's like an encyclopedia of wrestling.
Yeah, I feel like he would be a guy that, like, you just put him and Biggins in a room.
Oh yeah,
and that just goes on for hours.
Yeah, it was. He's a good dude. I really liked Brian Kendrick. I was in fear that Brian Kendrick would no longer like me after he saw Worldwide throw his own body down a flight of stairs in a 4-star hotel.
It was to impress him, though, wasn't it?
I don't know what it was,
I don't think it had the desired effect if that's what it was going for.
Like,
but
Brian Kendrick was going to get him booked somehow.
But Brian Kendrick and Dave the Potato, good friends.
That's crazy. Do you think that Dave the Potato has sold Brian Kendrick a car?
No. Here's the thing about Dave the Potato. When you send Dave the Potato on the pickup mission, he's storing that phone number.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Hey, and he's he's keeping in contact. Hey, Arn, happy birthday, Arn Anderson. He's one of those guys.
Well, I think that's a good end note right there. That
Yeah, there we go. We haven't done this alumni one in a while, so
yeah. Sorry if we had any repeats, but maybe the stories were new. So
I
there
think
you
we
go.
avoided it. I think Drake maybe we've covered some of Drake
Yeah.
before, but otherwise,
We definitely talked about Drake throughout many episodes.
I've probably forgotten so many good memories of these guys. It's probably my CTE, but
It could be.
Biggins, that's the thing that he was good for. He knew every fucking detail on every single dealing with every single person on the planet that we ever dealt with. And it's hard. It's kind of hard for me, like, to fucking spring some of these memories up. Like, not young Briley. I don't know. I got nothing, dude.
That's why somebody was getting blasted about owing a debt for so long.
Marchie Archie.
No, different guy. The Fed. Well, that's going to do it here for us on this episode of AIW's The Card is Going to Change. Hopefully you enjoy this alumni episode. Like we said, it's been a while. We'll potentially do more of these in the future. We'll see. Maybe we'll wait another 2 years. But for President Matt Wadsworth, AIW owner John Thorne, my name's Steve Guy, and we'll talk to you next week, everybody.
Dave the Potato's going to text you guys on your birthday if you're in the WWE.